Hey guys, what's up? Ryan from PFC here. Getting a lot of requests from folks. They're asking questions about how we apply a silicon carbide grip surface to a firearm. We do this on handguns, do this on carbines, shotguns, anything along those lines. You can put it on magazines. I've got it up on the fore end of my rifle, flashlights. I've done it on all those things as well. There is the reshaping of a gun on Glocks. I'm kind of a big guy on that, filling the back strap and then removing the hump off the back, the front finger grooves, and kind of recontouring. That's something completely different than what we're talking here. This is just plain application of the silicon carbide. So things that you're going to need, first off, is silicon carbide. This is available in various grits. I bought this on Amazon Prime. This came in a 1-pound tub in 60 grit, just like sandpaper. I have had some people that have utilized 60 grit or I've helped them get their guns done, and afterwards it tore up their hands a little bit. For those folks, drink more milk. That's the big thing. But if you want to take and go with a milder grit, you can obviously purchase that as well. 2-ton or that 5-ton or however many ton it is, 2-part epoxy. The epoxy that comes in the syringe. This is from Gorilla Glue. Bought it at Lowe's or Home Depot. Some masking tape, a cheap little 95-cent paintbrush, acetone, paper towels, and in this case I've got a little stainless steel mixing bowl. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take and clean the gun, clean the surface that I'm going to take and apply that with some acetone or rubbing alcohol. That's going to remove any adhesive, any gunk, anything along those lines that I want to take and get rid of. The next thing, again, obviously clear and safe firearms, is I'm going to take masking tape and I'm going to tape off any areas where I don't want the silicon carbide to go. Once that is done, I'm going to take my 2-part epoxy and I'm going to blend that together. Now it's kind of important that you've got all these previous steps completed before you start blending this together, because the clock is in fact ticking. Some of this stuff sets as quickly as 5 minutes, so you kind of have to be ready to go. Get a good mix on that, the 2 parts, blending those guys together. And once you have that completed, you're going to take your paintbrush and you're going to apply that epoxy, paint that on to the surface that you want to take and treat. Don't worry about any ripples in it or uneven surfaces, because as it sits there, because it's liquid, it'll kind of balance or even itself out as you go. All right, as soon as you have that completed, this is where that steel mixing bowl is going to come into play. This is going to catch any over pour that you may have. So I usually wind up going completely through a cycle, if you will, of the entire tub. So I'll wind up pouring it all on. I don't want to lose it because I'm going to take and wind up using it again. Pour that silicon carbide on until it's completely coating everything. All surfaces coated, so you can no longer see any of the shiny epoxy. Another trick you can do is kind of build it up so it's sort of thick, and actually give it a pat with your finger to truly push it down into the epoxy. You don't want to leave any bare spots. That's a big thing. You don't want to leave the masking tape until later. If you do wind up leaving that until later, that's going to harden or get stuck there underneath the epoxy. So pretty much once you've got the epoxy brushed on and you've done your initial couple pours, that's when it's time to take that epoxy, or rather that masking tape, and pull that off. If you're taking and doing this with a handgun, when I take and do this with Glocks, I'll usually use foam earplugs. I'll roll those up and put those inside of the various holes, things like for the magazine release or takedown areas, or where the pins, the miscellaneous pins go on the gun, and I'll get those suckers pulled out before anything hardens up. If you don't, you're gonna have quite a bear of a time later on getting that crap out of there. Now, once that sucker's complete and you've got it as good as you think you're gonna get it, put it in a nice well-ventilated area, potentially out in the sun is really nice, and some heat, and let it dry. The first 1 or 2 times that you take and use the gun, usually just the first time you use the gun, the grip is going to shed, meaning every time you grab it, you are going to get little bits of silicon carbide are going to take and they're going to come off in your hand, but it'll then break in. If it starts losing its traction to the point that it's filling up with sunscreen and human skin and any of those perspiration, anything along those lines, Just some warm soap and water will take and clean it off, and that'll make it like new. Or you can simply just reapply anytime you want to go back. If you do a job and you don't like it, so you finish up and you say, I don't like the way that it took and it turned out, remember that acetone is the one substance that, as strong as that epoxy is, acetone will actually dissolve or defeat that. So pouring a little bit of acetone on the grip will loosen up or dissolve the epoxy base that's underneath, and through the use of a dental tool or a box cutter, you're almost able to, in one solid sheet, like peeling an orange, take the entire grip off and go back to the original surface, or start anew. So anyway, give it a try. We're big fans, big believers of it, and makes quite the difference. You probably won't go back to anything else. Stay safe.